Alright, welcome to today's lesson on data validation. So, what is data validation and why are we talking about it? Well, basically, it's the process of ensuring that only valid information is entered into your program. Because you may have heard the term before, garbage in, garbage out. So in other words, if the user types in a bunch of garbage that doesn't really what you're looking for in your program is going to give them a bunch of garbage back, which isn't going to be what they're looking for. So we want to come up with some sort of process that is going to ensure that the information we get from the user is exactly what we're looking for, so that we can use that data properly and then give them the results that they're looking for. Why do we want to do this? Well, if the user enters incorrect data, it's going to cause runtime problems in your programs. You're either going to get input that's out of range, resulting in weird results, or if you get an incorrect data type, you may even end up with a program crash, which obviously isn't ideal. So instead of doing that, we want to come up with a way to validate the data so our program can continue to run no matter what the user tries to do. So how do we do that? The first thing we do is we use prompts that are clear and concise. We're going to tell the user specifically what kind of information we want them to enter. We want to tell them what acceptable values we have. So if we're looking for numbers, we want to give them the lower end of the range and the upper end of the range. We want to tell them any kind of units that they're working with, so that we're clear whether you're talking about height in centimeters, feet, meters, kilometers, whatever. The clearer you are with your prompt, the clearer information your user is going to get, the better information they're going to give you. That part's the easy part. The next part is where we learn something new. And this is how we're going to learn how to check the user input to ensure that it actually met the criteria that we were looking for. This is going to make us use what's called a try-catch statement. A try-catch statement is sort of like an if-else statement, right? Where we're going to run something, if it works we do it, and if it doesn't work we do something else. So in this case we're going to try to run a particular line of code. And if that line of code runs properly, great, we continue on. If it doesn't run properly, then it's going to throw an error or throw an exception. Okay? If that exception is thrown, then we're going to run the code that is found in the catch portion of the try-catch statement. Now the last thing we need to take a look at is if they've actually had that error and it doesn't work, we want to allow them to re-prompt so they have another opportunity to input their data. This is going to make us do this all inside of some sort of loop that's going to continue to go until we've got the data that we're looking for. So let's take a look at what this would look like in an actual program. So here's a program that I've written that is going to essentially require the user to input a number between 1 and 10. And to do that, I've got a variable that is going to represent the actual number they input. And I've got a temporary variable that's going to be used for error checking. It's going to be a string that's going to temporarily input whatever they input and check to see if it's correct. So I've got my while loop here that's going to run over and over again. Essentially this is an infinite loop. By saying while true, it's going to run forever. Okay? Generally we don't want to do that in programming, but there are certain times, like in data validation, where this is an acceptable method. So this is going to continue to run until we get the correct data, at which point we will break out of this loop. Here's the try-catch portion. So I'm going to try to run all of this code. If I throw an error, in this case the exception I'm looking for is a number format exception, which means that we've input the incorrect data type. If that happens, I'm going to run the line of code down here, which basically says what you've put is invalid. Please try again. Okay? So I'm going to try to get them to enter a number, and to store that number as a string. This line of code here is going to try or attempt to convert that string into an integer. So integer.parseInt will convert this to an integer and store it. So if it's the wrong type, if it's not an integer, it's going to throw that number format exception we were talking about here, and which is then going to allow us to print out the statement, well, you didn't do it properly. Incidentally, you could also use the same type of thing for double, which would look like this. Double dot parse double, and then you provide whatever string you want to do, number string. So this would allow me to convert a string into a double. Okay? Now that I know that for sure I've got an actual integer value, I'm going to check to make sure it's the right range. So here, if it's between 1 and 10, I've got the correct range, so I can break out of this loop and my program will continue on doing whatever it's going to do. If it's not in the correct range, I'm going to print the statement it's out of range, and again I will loop back up to the top, getting them to enter a new number. So if I run this, we'll see that this works. So here we go. Please enter a number between 1 and 10. So I'm going to enter 11. 11 is out of range. Please enter number between 1 and 10. I'm going to go hubba, invalid, try again. Okay, well, let's try 7. Alright, we can follow instructions and we're done. That's it. That's all we have time for today. We'll see you in class tomorrow where we can practice what we've learned.